absolutely. I think the tax system of the United States has gotten so much worse. I'm going to put the year down. 1981 was a very bad year for equity in U.S. taxation. There are a number of groups working on this. You can probably search the internet as well as I can. We have a Boston-based group called United for a Fair Economy, UFE.org, I believe. And they're working on these issues, and if I had one more night a week, I would join their efforts in a full-throated way. I completely agree. If you really want change, socioeconomic change in this country, to make upward mobility more possible, use the tax system. It happened after World War II with the GI Bill and a number of things like a homeowner's mortgage write-offs and things like that that gave lower middle class people the opportunity to climb the socioeconomic strata, upward mobility. If it doesn't happen through the tax system, I don't know how that's going to happen. So I share your concern. I also share, I feel a little pessimistic here. Our country's taxation system has gotten less and less progressive, more and more regressive, hurting the little guy. Yes, in the back.
The question is, as you look into the future, whether you are optimistic or pessimistic, and let me elaborate for a second. When you look at the signs of the time, and you look at a very secular Europe, and a sense of entitlement of the children of wealth in the middle class of America, and they will apply their value system to the choices that they have to make. And those choices will drive the direction of the global economy. I'm going back to my question. Do you see a renewed sense of optimism? Or do you scratch your head and you said, I really don't know how this is going to come out?
I spend so much time scratching my head, there's nothing left.
The same here.
We have the same problem. We're politically challenged. You point out some reasons to be pessimistic, but I don't think they're the last word, and I suspect you don't think they're the last word either. Our world is a world of great riches and great poverty. One of the things I worry about, and you mentioned secularization and division, one of the things I worried about is that those who are extremely privileged don't often rub shoulders anymore with those who are not. I just see more and more proclivity of people falling back into what the authors of the book Habits of the Heart, Robert Bellah from this Bay Area, co-wrote that book. Lifestyle enclaves is the phrase that comes from the book Habits of the Heart. People associate with people of their same economic status, strata, and they don't see very often the needs, the desperate needs of those who are poor, and it becomes easier and easier to blame the poor for their own poverty. And people of wealth tend to overlook the way that the structures of the world, educational structures, healthcare structures, economic structure, the job market, the segmented labor markets, work in a very skewed way. It's not a level playing field. The only way that privileged people will know more about that is to actually go out and meet some people of low income and to see that they do work. In fact, they usually work harder than the rich people because they have the kind of jobs that you can't shirk the work. It's easier to shirk work in a white-collar job than a blue-collar job. I see this in my own family, for example. Most of my uncles were blue-collar workers. Most of my generation, including myself, I'm a black-collar worker. Right now. But most of us are white-collar workers in my generation, and we don't have the opportunities to cross paths with people who might work in a factory or work in a service job or be a janitor or custodian. So I worry about this in my family, and then I obviously spread it wider. So am I pessimistic? You've brought me around to being pessimistic again. But I do hope that people do have an innate sense of fairness. And I'll tell you, here's a great group. Here I am recommending lots of activist groups, but why not? Witness for Peace. Witness for Peace brings about 500 people a year, mostly kind of white, middle-class Americans, takes them on tours to countries in Latin America. I went on one to Cuba last summer. It was very hot, by the way. I did get a few good cigars out of the trip. I probably didn't need the trip because I've done these things before. I call these things theotourism. I coined that word, it doesn't go through spell check. You've heard of ecotourism? This is theological tourism. But to spend some time with people who are in struggling areas, maybe they don't have access to running water or whatever, they don't have access to work. Cuba is one example. Witness for Peace brings people to Nicaragua, to Colombia, a country ravaged by civil strife, drug wars, etc. These are really good movements, and we need more people like this. We need more groups that bring into contact the very rich and the very poor. So I won't be as pessimistic as I might be, but the burden of proof really is on those of us who would make things change. Another question?
You made your comment about the Pope. We haven't had a letter from the Pope, let's just accept the fact that it's incorrect. But do you have any insight about why we haven't had any more great letters from the American bishops? We have those great letters on peace, great letters on the economy, and they haven't had a lot of good things to say. I mean, could you, I realize that's a real thicket of issues.
It's a thicket. I have a 3-hour lecture on this topic. I'll give you the 90-second version. The bishops, I call the 1980s the golden age of the U.S. Bishops' Conference. That was the decade in '83, the Challenge of Peace, a wonderful letter on peace and war. And in 1986, Economic Justice for All, there was a letter on the U.S. economy, and it includes some things on globalization, by the way, even before the fall of the Soviet Union made globalization front page news. By the way, they planned a letter, which was supposed to be published in 1989, every 3 years pattern, on the concerns of women in the church and in civil society. They scrapped it. You can, however, get a copy of the draft. I'll let you know where to find it. Those were the 3 big issues: war and peace, economy, gender relations, that the bishops decided to tackle in the 80s. In the year, I'm going to get the year wrong, in the year 1998, okay, the bishops were a little quiet for a few years. In the year 1998, from Rome, from Cardinal Ratzinger's office, the office on the doctrine of the faith, came a letter called Apostolos Suos. It's only a 6-page letter. To tell you the truth, the first 5 pages sound pretty good to me. When you turn to the 6th page, it's a reining in of the bishops' conferences, and it submits all of their deliberations to very high scrutiny. In other words, in order for those letters to be passed now, that were passed in the 80s, under this new document from 1998, the bishops would have to vote unanimously in order to make it official and binding kind of Catholic doctrine for a country. Well, the U.S. bishops have never done anything unanimously. 220 men in a room who never seem to agree, if you said this wall is white, some of them would vote against